Hey guys, so this is our third video of the series on histology, and this one is going to be on muscles. So there are three different muscle types that you need to know, and for muscle histology, here's our muscle group. We're finally over here. We are going to talk about the three different muscle types. There is cardiac, there's smooth, and there is skeletal muscle. So our first up is skeletal muscle. With three different muscle types, for lecture, you've got to be able to differentiate these guys on their qualities, their traits. On lab, you definitely need to be able to differentiate these guys on site. What type of muscle are you looking at? So we have skeletal is up first. With skeletal muscle, those are the guys that allow me to sit here and talk to you and move my arms and all of that good stuff is skeletal muscle. That stuff is controlled. I am telling my skeletal muscle to move, so it is voluntarily controlled. It is going to have different types of connective tissue around different areas within the muscle. So I want to go over those guys. So that's why I've got these slides up first, are the different types of connective tissue that surround the skeletal muscle. And so it goes from outside. I like to describe it from outside to inside. So outside is going to be the epimysium. So if I was talking about going around the entire, I don't know, biceps, if I was going around my whole biceps brachii, that connective tissue that goes around that would be epimysium. Epimysium goes around the whole thing. So if this was the whole slide, like it would go around the whole thing, all of it, the whole thing. Epimysium, M-Y-S-I-U-M, epimysium. Probably not the best handwriting, but epimysium is around the whole muscle. And then we're going to dig in a little deeper. So each muscle is made out of these bundles of muscle fibers. And so the individual cells are going to be packaged up and they will be in these bundles called a fascicle. So I've got all my fingers bundled up into a fascicle, and there's connective tissue that goes around those guys. So if we're talking about what goes around each fascicle, and so here's one fascicle that we've zoomed in on. Here, here's a grouping, here's a grouping, here's a grouping, here's, all of these different ones, fascicles. So if we're talking about the ones that go in between, around the fascicles and in between the little areas, that is going to be perimysium. I'm running out of space. Perimysium goes around the fascicles. So epi on the outside of the whole muscle. Peri is going to be around each of the fascicles and the gaps in between the fascicles. So each little bundle is a fascicle. This around the fascicle, the little spaces in between the fascicles, perimysium. And then when we get down to an individual muscle fiber, an individual muscle cell, and those guys are going to have endomysium. Endomysium. So if we look within this fascicle, this whole thing is a fascicle. If we look within the fascicle, we are going to have each cell. I hope we can make these guys out. These are individual cells here, that guy. So if we're talking about going around an individual muscle fiber, that is endomysium. So epi, peri, endo, you can't read it, but it's going to be endomysium, goes around each cell, around the fiber, each muscle fiber. So those are our three different mysiums that we need to know. Around the entire muscle, epimysium. Around the bundle, which is called a fascicle, around the bundle is going to be perimysium. And then around an individual, one single muscle fiber, the connective tissue that goes around just that one guy is going to be endomysium. Endomysium. So this is endomysium. Endomysium. Around the whole thing, around this whole fascicle will be perimysium. And then if we were talking about the muscle, the whole thing, all the fibers wrapped in fascicles, or in the fascicles, are all wrapped up together in one big connective tissue around the whole muscle. Around the whole muscle is epimysium, around the whole thing, epimysium. So those are the different mysiums. Know them, love them. Be able to identify them in lecture and lab, and then be able to identify skeletal muscle. So if we zoom in on a different angle on the muscle here. We can see them running longitudinally. So they're going to be pretty long muscle cells. We got one right here. And if you check out these muscle cells, again, we said they were skeletal muscle is going to be voluntarily controlled. They are also kind of cool in the fact that they have multiple nuclei. So our nuclei are going to be, you know, our little dark purple guys up here. But if you look at this guy, look, you got 1, 2, 3 nuclei in there. Here's 1, 2 nuclei on this guy. Here's another one. He's just got one, but some of these other ones, multiple nuclei. So these guys are long, they are multinucleate, they are voluntarily controlled, and they are also, I don't know if you can make it out, but I hope you can. If you zoom in, maybe you can zoom in, you can make out these stripes. The stripes are called striations, and that's because you're going to have these little myofibrils, actin and myosin, and the actin and myosin are going to overlap. And where they overlap, they're going to cause the light that's coming through there to be a little darker. So you're going to alternate between dark areas, light areas, dark areas, light areas, and it causes the stripes. The stripes are called striations. So I hope that you can make out the striations on this slide. I hope that you can see that these are very long cells and that they are multinucleate. All these nuclei there. Look at all these nuclei in this group and here. They are multinucleate. This is skeletal muscle. Recognize this type of muscle is skeletal muscle. It's going to be located all over your body, attached to your skeleton, helping you do all the movements that you want to do with your body. Conscious control of movement, of moving things into your body. Skeletal muscle. When you go to eat something and put it in your mouth, that is voluntarily controlled skeletal muscle. Our next category is going to be in a different area, and it's called cardiac. So where do you think that bad boy is going to be located? Obviously, it's in the heart. It's got cardia in the name. So this guy is going to be found in the heart. What's the heart's job? The heart's job is to pump the blood through all the blood vessels, through all the arteries and veins and capillaries throughout your body, and get that nutritious blood to the cells, get the oxygen to the cells. Its job is to pump it. So it has muscle that allows it to do so, and it's specialized muscle in the heart called cardiac muscle. When you look at this slide, these cells also look kind of long, but a giveaway that you're looking at cardiac muscle cells are these guys. So look at these really long cells. Here's another one that's really long. But if you look at this, I hope you can notice these dark areas where the cells connect. These dark areas are called intercalated discs. Intercalated discs. So intercalated discs are super cool. They are going to have these little gap junctions where the two cells meet up at this intercalated disc, which is this dark area on the slide is the intercalated disc, and they have these gap junctions, and that is going to allow one cell to talk to the next cell. It's super cool. Cardiac muscle cells all talk to each other, and they all move as one functional unit. It's functional syncytium. Super cool stuff. So cardiac muscle cell has these. These are kind of a giveaway. These intercalated discs. The big guys, nucleus. Nucleus. The big ovals are nucleus. Don't get the nuclei confused with the intercalated discs. Intercalated discs. All of these, again, these little guys that are going against the length of the cell, transverse to it, are going to be intercalated discs. The big ovals are the nuclei. The skinnier lines going perpendicular are going to be intercalated discs. So these are very long cells. They have intercalated discs, and occasionally you will note that they branch. So here's one that is branching, comes along and he splits. So these guys can branch. They have intercalated discs. They have a nucleus. They are uninucleate instead of the skeletal muscle what we saw before that had multiple nuclei in there. These guys just have one. So just one nucleus per cell, uninucleate, branching. They too, like skeletal muscle, are going to have striation. So I don't think this picture really shows it, but I promise you that there are striations on this type of tissue where we're going to have our fibers overlap. Our actin and myosin are going to overlap. So they are striated. These are going to have uninucleate, just one nucleus. They have intercalated discs. They branch, and What's another thing? Their control. Do you tell the heart to beat? No. No, you don't. So since you don't tell it to do its thing, it is on our autonomic nervous system. This is not going to be voluntary. This is involuntary. So your skeletal muscle is voluntary. Your cardiac, your heart is involuntary. You don't tell it what to do. So it is pumping the blood. Autonomic nervous system is telling it what to do. The last and not least is smooth muscle. It's our last stop. So we found skeletal muscle all over the body, and it is going to help us with movements. We find cardiac muscle tissue in the heart, and that is going to help us pump the blood. And we have smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is going to line all of our hollow areas. So remember, we're talking about epi lines, the lumen, the space where things are going to go through, your GI tract, where food's going to go through, the blood vessels, where the blood's going to pass through. Those are all going to be coated with epi. And then underneath the epithelial area is going to be, in these areas in the GI tract, in the blood vessels, it's going to be smooth muscle. So here, going along, what looks to be, this looks like a GI slide, is smooth muscle. And if I zoom in on it, we have all of this cells. This guy is called smooth muscle because unlike skeletal and cardiac, those guys had striations. Smooth muscle does not have striations. It still has the myofibrils, it still has actin and myosin, but those guys aren't linked up to make pretty little lines of dark and light over and over again. They don't do that. They do have muscle fibers and they will connect, but they don't connect to pretty little lines like that. They're kind of strangely spaced, but they're little dense bodies. That's for lecture. But do know for lab, no striations. That's why they're called smooth. No striations. These are going to be kind of spindly shaped, so they're kind of skinny and thin for these. Here's a little guy here. There's another guy here. This guy. They're kind of skinny, just like they sound. Spindle shaped. Look at the number of nuclei. Skeletal muscle had multiple nuclei in their cells. Cardiac muscle only had one nuclei, so it was called uninucleate. And these two only have the one nucleus, so they are also uninucleate with smooth muscle. So those are our different tissue types for muscle: cardiac, skeletal, smooth muscle. Be able to recognize all three of them. Know all three of these guys on site. Are you looking at skeletal? Are you looking at cardiac? Are you looking at smooth? Know any sort of special characteristics like they're multinucleate or uninucleate. Can you make out striations? Skeletal muscle, need to know your myciums. Endo, peri, and epimycium, know your myciums. And hopefully this will help you with your muscle histology.